calling it thoughts, since that's the word I used in the question. So thoughts exist and they happen. How can they be immoral?
At this point.
Okay, I think you guys are trying to determine if either of you believe a thought can be immoral. And Glink, in your head, you entertain a whole bunch of thoughts of just murdering women, and that's just like a funny thing for you to think about a lot, and you do that over and over and over again. And maybe I think here's the next stage of the discussion. Okay, MrGirl, what you should do is you should try to identify what you think could be in Glink's mind. Can I make you a bet right now? I'll give you 10-to-1 odds. Okay, on $1,000. I'll pay you $10,000 if I'm wrong on whether or not
you are bringing up an action. Can you answer this without bringing up? Can you answer this without bringing up an action or spirit? How can a thought be wrong?
You're denying conscious experience. Because conscious experience exists. That's why a thought can be wrong.
How does that mean a thought can be wrong? You're not making the moral. Yes, I believe thoughts exist, and if you have a bunch of thoughts, you can call it consciousness. So let's just stick to calling it thoughts, since that's the word I used in the question. So thoughts exist and they happen. How can they be immoral?
The same way that anything can be immoral. Because thoughts don't exist in a vacuum. That's the answer.
I don't know what that means.
Okay, well, I can explain.
You're alluding to something else existing along with thoughts. I strongly suspect the thing you're alluding to existing along with thoughts is spirits, and the other thing you're alluding to is actions. But without alluding to them or mentioning them, can you definitively explain how a thought can be wrong?
I think I'm losing my mind.
Thoughts are only experienced through consciousness. Is that not a sufficient answer for you? You want an answer. That's the answer. You just don't want to
how thoughts can be wrong. Okay, so we're making a law that says it's illegal to think about really bad things because it's immoral. Well, no, I'm saying if I were making a law and I was going to say well, if it's immoral to think about something, then maybe we should try to stop it. And then somebody says, well, why is it immoral to think about it? And I say, because consciousness exists.
I don't think
we should try to no, it's not a fucking answer. It's not an answer.
Well, no. hold on. I didn't say we should try to police people's thoughts. I think we agree on that. I think people can only really save themselves.
Why not? If they're immoral, why shouldn't we police it?
Because it's up to people to save themselves, not to be talked down to and told what to do.
Well, do you think it should be legal? Do you think it should be legal to like slit your wrists?
Should it be illegal to slit your wrists?
Yeah. Should you be allowed to just slit your wrists like in public?
Yeah, I think it should be illegal,
That should
but
not be something you should do.
You know, but I don't think it should be illegal to think about suicide, for example. Even though I think suicide
but it should be illegal to do it.
Sure, but now you're talking about actions.
I don't feel you're answering my question, and I don't think you're going.
I think you're just not satisfied with the answer.
Yeah.
No, you literally are. You're just not
now.
answering. You're just saying consciousness is an experience. We experience consciousness, so therefore it's wrong to think about fucking a 15-year-old. It just doesn't make any fucking sense.
That's a separate. Well, look, what you're really asking is there morality? Where does morality come from? That's basically what you're asking.
No, I'm asking how can a thought be immoral? Dude,
yeah, but
I'm
thoughts
asking
don't
the question
exist.
very clearly, and I'm saying exactly what I mean.
You're trying to detach thoughts from consciousness. That's the problem.
what?
So if anything can be immoral, thoughts are anything. That's what I'm saying.
Can anything be immoral? Is a pencil immoral?
It's not complicated. It's just nonsensical.
I think you just don't understand. Maybe there's another way. Maybe this question is not productive because I don't think it's furthering your understanding.
I think it's not productive because you can't answer it.
I think we should probably move on. It's kind of like we're talking in circles.
Yeah, we're at an impasse. I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Oh shit, do they need a moderator?
You just don't understand the concept I'm trying to convey, MrGirl. That's the thing.
Or do they already have
It
moderators?
doesn't make any fucking sense.
Was it possible to go? You said you could go deeper on that, like
Consciousness doesn't make any sense logically.
Can you explain how, okay, explain what you mean by consciousness, because I feel like the chat has no idea what that means, right? Like, explain that idea.
What you're experiencing right now in this moment, and the thoughts that are arising in your head,
right?
You're not the author of those thoughts, but yet you're experiencing them. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the phenomenon of consciousness.
Who is the author of those thoughts?
That's a very deep existential question. and then you open up the realm to philosophy and religion, and that's what
Can you answer that question, or because
Who is the author of those thoughts?
Augie is the moderator.
I'll try
Oh,
my
never
best to answer it because I do think it's an interesting point.
Is
I think-
consciousness a stand-in for spirituality? Are you saying that you're getting those
Let
thoughts
me
from
explain,
a
let me
spiritual?
explain.
Are those thoughts coming from a spiritual, metaphysical place?
I think who you are is a collection of
look at the kitty.
experiences. And so it's not like you're this one divided self, this individual who's completely detached from the world and people around you. We're all collections of experiences, and we're all united by the fact that we are uniquely to humans, self-aware of the fact that we're
it true
having
that
this
that-
conscious experience.
Does Destiny actually want to get in?
Why would he interrupt the whole
if
convo?
that's the case, yeah, let him in.
Now I feel so bad.
Yeah, if
chat
Destiny
might
wants
be-
in, then yeah, get in here.
Yeah.
Go in. Get in where? Get in where?
Okay, I'm gonna add him.
All right.
Cool.
Wait, how do you add friends to DM?
Hi.
Oh, hi. I was just listening
Hello.
while eating. I'm playing Elden Ring right now. Oh, but I just saw you were at an impasse, so I just wanted to see what was going on.
Thank God.
I have no idea at this point.
Okay, I think you guys are trying to determine if either of you believe a thought can be immoral. And Glink says that a thought in and of itself can be immoral. MrGirl, you seem to think that a thought cannot be immoral.
I think a thought cannot be immoral unless you're appealing to spirits or the idea that the thought is going to lead to an action.
I don't care
Yeah.
about any of that. Okay, so but if
Okay,
you say
yeah.
unless it leads to an action, then you agree. Okay, so
Right.
MrGirl thinks that no thought can be immoral. Glink, why do you think a thought can be immoral?
I think a thought can be immoral because ultimately I think everything you indulge in, even if it's not a literal action and not happening in reality, still matters because it shapes who you are. It shapes what your future is. It has an impact on what your future is and the future on people around you. Even if it never manifests into actions, which, by the way, is a huge hypothetical because I think thoughts do lead to actions, obviously. But, you know, even just saying if they hypothetically didn't, it's like it still has an impact on how you view yourself, how you view others, and how you treat others and yourself ultimately. So
Treating others is an action. The only way your thoughts
Okay.
can impact
Hold on.
your
Okay.
action.
So, Glink does not think that a thought is intrinsically or inherently immoral. But if we look at it from a virtuous point of view, what Glink is saying is that if you were to entertain a whole bunch of thoughts that were negative, invariably this will bleed out into some action or engagement with the world that becomes less moral or immoral, right?
I think that's true, but it's not always an action that's so direct. It's
No,
not
of course.
like,
Hold on.
oh,
Wait, yeah. We don't have to be dumb. It's not a level 0 engagement. So, like, maybe it might be the thing that, like, in your head, you entertain a whole bunch of thoughts of just murdering women. And that's just, like, a funny thing for you to think about a lot. And you do that over and over and over again. And maybe it doesn't manifest in you killing a woman, but maybe you see a woman at the office and you, like, you knock her papers over because you're like, fuck women. And I think about it. It's like something silly like that is what he's saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in this case, Glink and MrGirl, you probably both agree, right?
Well, we both agree with me that thoughts are not immoral, but actions are. So knocking a woman's papers over your office.
Yes, thoughts are not immoral, but the next step is that it's probably impossible to divorce thought from our action. It's highly improbable to
Well, that's fine.
imagine-
If the answer to the answer to the morality question is that thoughts are not immoral,
Mm-hmm.
which is the fucking question I've been asking for half an hour, is that yes, they're not immoral, but they lead to actions. That's fine.
Yeah,
But
okay,
I'm
cool. Yeah,
asking
there you
if
go.
that's your
it.
justification.
That is his justification. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so then that
Okay.
is that true, Blink?
Why are you trying so? See, you're trying to separate thoughts and put them in a vacuum and say that these thoughts just exist on their own and that they're.
Well, that's how
completely
language
neutral on
works.
their own.
I'm not saying they exist on their own. I'm saying that's how language works. So when I say the word thoughts, we're talking about thoughts that are in your head and not actions. And when I'm asking you if thoughts by themselves are immoral because you said they were. Now, with Destiny's help, you're saying that they're not, and I appreciate that. I think it's really good that you're saying that.
Okay, I think
Because-
the
What are you saying?
here's the next stage of the discussion. Okay, Mr. Girl, what you should do is you should try to identify what you think could be, in Glink's mind, potentially harmful thoughts that you truly believe will never lead to negative outcomes. One example might be violent video games, for instance. We can think about violent video games. We don't. But Glink might say that, like, as a counterexample, people that entertain a lot of really negative thoughts are probably more likely to be less virtuous people. You probably don't find a lot of people that think good things, or I'm sorry, people that think horrible things. No, it's not correlated. It's causal, is what he would say.
You're saying people who are willing to entertain those thoughts.
No, we're not talking about willing. We're not. No, hold on. The question isn't like, are you willing to entertain a random thought that comes to your head? It's, do you actively think about these things for?
Yes. Yeah. So you're saying that could make you into a less virtuous person if you entertain those thoughts too much.
Consistently, sure.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it could also make you into a more virtuous person if you entertain those thoughts.
No, probably not immoral ones. Probably more moral ones, right?
I don't agree. I think video games might make you a less violent person, or maybe if you're like a teacher and you have a 15-year-old student you're attracted to, maybe jerking off to drawings of having sex with a 15-year-old will help you process that and get it out of your system and make you a better teacher.
Okay, well, this is...
I like, if we look at like Catholic priests, I have not seen a lot of evidence that pushing thoughts down makes you into a more moral person. I guess that maybe that's where we fundamentally
but I think that now I understand, but now you're getting into like a weird fact-based world that's kind of divorced from the ethical argument you're having, because both of you would probably agree. I'm not going to use the most extreme example. Fuck it, I will use the most extreme. Both of you would probably agree that if people thought about their 15-year-old students and masturbated to it, and that kept them from raping them, it'd probably be an okay thing. And both of you would probably agree that if they thought about those students and then acted out and raped them, that it would be a not okay thing, right? So getting into the weeds on the fact-based thing isn't going to be interesting. It's the ethical argument, right?
Well, the only reason I'm getting into the weeds is not to say that I'm right, that it's always better. It's to say that we don't know. And if we don't know, then we can't say an immoral thought is immoral on its own.
Okay, but here's the thing. I think we can know, because your view seems to be that, like, well, it's completely up in the air whether indulging in these thoughts leads to certain lifestyles or certain behaviors. That's just completely up for interpretation, is basically what you're saying. And I think, whether I know what it is or don't, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that there is a sort of
I think I was really hungry.
framework to which thinking about things and indulging in them will more often than not lead to certain things. In other words, I don't think it's completely arbitrary.
No, you're just, I know, but you're just saying that you're right. So like I like gay porn. So if I look at gay porn, I'm dating a woman. If I watch gay porn, does that mean that I'm going to become slowly less satisfied with her insufficient female body? Or does it mean that I'm, scratching that itch, and so now I don't feel the need to stray and I'm more comfortable?
Okay, hold on, wait. This is just my last intervention, because I can see you guys are talking about totally different things, okay? So I think, Mr. Girl, your idea of an impure thought is, in a certain controlled environment, could you deliberately engage with something that might be destructive, but you could also like extract some sort of pleasurable interaction out of? Those are the types of deliberately immoral thoughts you're thinking about. So we might talk about an indulgence in a certain drug or pornography or violent media or whatever, but you're talking about a cognizant, deliberate engagement with those thoughts in a way where you try to act responsibly. I think Glink is talking more broadly about, I'll use a concept our parents told us, garbage in, garbage out. What Glink is saying is that if a person is inundated with immoral and impure thoughts day in and day out, and they think about all these horrible things, it's highly unlikely that that's not going to manifest in some sort of behavior. But you guys are talking about, like, Mr. Girl, you're thinking about the very thing, like, well, what if I'm only masturbating to gay porn when I'm horny? And that particular thing is going to be a little bit different than Glink saying, what if you consume shitty media, listen to shitty people, have shitty friends, do shitty, like, not necessarily think eventually it's going to bleed down to your actions. I think it's the difference.
Yes, it might bleed down to your actions, but within that, we still have to answer the question of, if you actively fantasize or allow yourself to fantasize about whatever shitty things you're taking in, is that thought part, is that immoral on its own? Are thoughts immoral? Are fantasies immoral? Regardless of where you found them or how they got to you, or what's going to happen after they pass through you. I don't know that, like, saying, like, oh, like, I saw all this stuff.
Here's what it is. Literally speaking, I think you're right that the thoughts themselves, because I'm saying I'm the one, I also acknowledge you are not your thoughts. So the thoughts themselves are not immoral, but choosing to indulge in them can be moral or immoral. That's what I'm saying.
which I think you both would probably agree in. If
don't
Jeffrey
agree with that. I
Dahmer
don't
or
think
some
it's
sociopathic serial killer guy was constantly and continually indulging in like psychopathic murderous thoughts, and then he was
No,
doing
you're
that.
setting up the.
Well, that's the whole point, but that's the setup, right? Is that chances are most highly immoral people preceding their highly immoral actions are probably thinking a lot of highly immoral thoughts, right? It probably doesn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah, but that's correlation. But what,
No,
what
no,
I'm
no,
saying
no.
is
It's
we're all
not correlated. That's causal. It's the chains are there leading one to another, right?
I'm saying we're all thinking lots of highly immoral thoughts and having lots of highly immoral fantasies.
But there's
and
a
so,
difference.
Yes, some of
but
us,
there's a difference.
some of us
between, like,
act on them, but I don't think the thoughts are immoral themselves.
It's like a dual layer thing, right? Like thoughts will penetrate the first layer because they do. Like you hear about a gay thing, you hear about a trans thing, you hear about a conservative thing, a political whatever. Things will penetrate that first surface. Like, oh, you hear a thing, but there's a difference between taking that and then taking it one level deeper and now seriously contemplating the thought. That's the difference. So if Glink here, I don't know if he's arguing for, I don't know what specific immoral, we'll say violence, right? There's a difference between like you watch a violent program or somebody mentions like a terrorist and you're like, oh wow, that's whatever, versus taking that thought and being like, if I wanted to kill the most amount of people possible, where would I bomb in the United States, right? That's like a different type of engagement with that thought.
Are you honestly saying that you think it's immoral to think about that?
No, I don't agree with Glink's position at all. I'm just explaining what his position is.
Yeah, okay. I think it's immoral to indulge in it. Yeah, because you're creating more of a space for it in your mind. You're creating a larger fantasy out of something that you initially just arose out of your head. But now, if you believe in free will, I guess that's where this conversation.
And what I'm afraid of, what I think is that you don't know if that's how it works all the time, or what if you don't make space for it? What if that makes you more likely to snap and act on it? We don't know the answer, and so since there is not always an answer that we know, then like.
So Glink, I think what MrGirl is worried about is that what you're essentially saying is that it almost comes off as like the criminalization of any thought that could theoretically lead to an impure action. So there's two huge problems that come with this. One is sometimes it's fun to engage in a little bit of mental debauchery without actually like going all the way. This might come out like say in the bedroom where you do like edgy like race play, rape play or whatever stuff like that. Like you wouldn't want to do this in real life, actually rape somebody, but it could be fun to like engage with that in a fun way. Or in violent video games, it'd be fun to tear people up, kill people, cut their throats. But it's just a video game. And there's two problems. One is, do we lose the ability to engage or indulge in that a little bit for fun in a deliberate but controlled way? And then two, do we run into the issue where if we illegalize these thoughts, now people are repressing stuff or pushing stuff away and not actually adequately engaging with a thought that might round out their character more or give them something to reflect on that will have like a bigger impact somewhere else in their life. So say somebody constantly has these visions of like, I think I want to kill my mom, but they just like push it away and they don't ever think about it. And someday they just snap and they murder their parent instead of like thinking like, okay, why do I want to kill my mom so much? Like what the fuck is going on? And then they reflect or whatever. So it's those two things. One is the criminalization of fun thought that could be a little bit immoral, but just like fun. And then the second is people are just going to repress stuff, ignore it, pretend it's not part of their psyche, and then that's just going to like lead to a whole bunch of bad shit when you repress stuff and it eventually explodes.
I'm not advocating for criminalization or legalization of thoughts. I think actually we could probably agree on most of this because I actually think you should be aware of your thoughts and be honest with them and confront them. But where MrGirl and I differ is that he's like saying these thoughts arise, so whether we indulge in them or not, it's not a big deal. And I'm saying these thoughts arise, we should be aware of them. And like you said, like ask the question, like, why am I thinking this way? Why is this a thing?
Okay,
and it's not something you can criminalize.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think you guys both agree. You're just hung up on what that word indulge means. When you say indulge, you're thinking of a reckless, hedonistic engagement with a thought that could theoretically lead to your destruction. When MrGirl says indulge, even though he uses the word indulge and he fucking shouldn't, when he says indulge, he's probably talking about an honest, vulnerable engagement with a scary thought that you're doing in a responsible but deliberate way, but not where you're going down a path of like absolute destruction. It's my guess.
Well, I guess I think part of that comes with what you do after it. So like if you hear about this comic that Flamenco looked at with this 15-year-old having sex with somebody, and you're a teacher and you're deciding how you're going to manage your relationships with your students, and you don't look at it, and you go into teaching unaware that you're actually highly aroused by the idea of 15-year-olds fucking their teachers, that could set you up for failure. Whereas if you do allow yourself to indulge in the thought and you enjoy it and you jack off to this comic 100 times in a row every day, then you from that could take moral actions. that might make you decide to do something like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't, since I'm specifically interested in 15-year-olds, maybe I shouldn't teach this grade. Or maybe I shouldn't be a teacher at all.
Why
or
is
maybe
it so
I need
binary,
to,
though?
maybe...
It's either, in your mind, you're saying either you completely ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist, or you just go all in. And I think the better route
because
is to be
the
like,
art,
why?
the,
Question it. Question why you think that. Why is that arising? Why do you feel that way? What
it's
is
not,
the deeper
it's not,
reasons?
I
Go
don't,
deeper than that.
that's not what I'm talking about, motherfucker. What I'm talking about is, even if you engaged in it in the way that you are framing as the most immoral, where you're hedonistically masturbating to this material about teachers fucking students, that still could have a positive outcome on your life and on the students.
It could, Mr. Girl, but you need to have a responsible engagement with it, right? Like, let's say that you're a teacher and you do look at one of these comics, and now for like the next 2 weeks, you get on fucking, you download Tor or whatever, and you're going through child. You're like, holy shit! This, like, that's probably not a good engagement with the material, right?
I agree with that.
Well, downloading child porn action, and that's
No, fuck. I don't care about that.
Yes.
That's boring. Okay, let's say you have a way to view it telegraphic or some. Who cares? We're not talking about that crime of child. I'm just saying that you can indulge in a thought and then engage with that thought, probably irresponsibly, right? It requires some deliberate level of responsible engagement, right?
But can you give me an example that doesn't involve the slippery slope of then taking actions that we both agree are immoral?
Dude.
Just thinking about jerking off to child porn constantly. What if they just go to bed every night? They're like, oh yeah, I want to fuck 14-year-olds. Oh, and they just do that constantly, and they jerk off to it, and they don't ever think about it, reflect, introspect. You don't think that could lead to maybe potentially a problem down the line if they're in their head and their fantasies thinking about that? Yeah. So there needs to be some deliberately responsible engagement with the thought, right?
I don't know that there does need to be, but I
thoughts from actions. I think it's also consistent to divorce thoughts from consciousness, and that's the step you're not taking. We are not.
I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Okay. Here's my problem.
Do you think people are their thoughts?
I don't think this should be the conversation where you try to define what a person is. That's really complicated.
Do you think you are your thoughts? Are you defined by your thoughts?
It's the same question.
Are you defined?
Here's my problem.
It's a really complicated question. Yeah.
Here's my problem with the framing of going to bed looking at child blah blah blah. Is that you're attaching a subsequent behavior or thought pattern or whatever to the question of, is a thought immoral? So the thought itself, I don't think.
Okay, hold on. Before we loop on this, we all agree on this. Okay, here's the issue, okay? Everybody agrees right now. If you could do heroin one time, that would be awesome, right? Like, you get like the crazy euphoria of doing heroin, and you get to have that awesome experience. You get to have it once. That's so cool. That would be a cool thing. If you could do heroin one time, that would be awesome. You can't say no to this unless you've just never done a drug before, okay? But the problem isn't that you'll do heroin one time. The problem is that every time you do heroin, you are fundamentally altered as an agent, as a thinking person, to wanting to do more and more and more heroin.
Problem.
That's the issue.
I'm not looping. You are framing you are attaching a bunch of other shit to the one immoral thought to make it immoral.
But what I'm trying to tell you is that I think Glink and most people, and I think I would hesitantly throw my lot in here, is that you cannot completely divorce your thoughts from your actions. It's not that like we go into a chamber at the end of the day and now we can take apart our thoughts and blah, 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 and then we step out of that chamber.
Yes, but we don't know.
Yeah.
But, right, and so the question is fantasy, since we almost usually fantasizing about doing things that are wrong or selfish somehow,
like your mom.
Is fantasy itself, is fantasy itself leading to immoral behavior most of the time? And I don't think that's true. I think fantasy is part of being healthy.
Okay, well this is the disagreement you guys have. So I'm gonna go play Elden Ring more and listen to you guys. Have fun. Be careful.
All right, thanks for stopping by.
Bye.
I'm gonna get a drink. 1 second. I'll be back. So this is
Or be like, no ma'am, no ma'am, no ma'am, but just so it's easier to have these types of
hating your life
conversations,
then, working
have
class
everybody
Andy.
on the same page instead of having these long, exhaustive discussions about semantics, which is what you have been engaging with so far. Everybody else can go. I need to get a water.
All right. Let's go to interjections.
Can I just retort for 10 seconds?
10 seconds, yeah.
okay, if you think you're right, then I understand why you think it's about semantics. But for me, the conversation isn't about semantics, it's about human nature, because we're trying to define what is rare, what is unusual, what is even noteworthy. Is it noteworthy that somebody has 10 fingers? Like, no, it's not noteworthy. So I'm saying that I don't think that whatever I said about cuties, or whatever I've said after about cuties, or girls or little boys, or well, Josh, let me fucking finish. I don't, Josh, please, Josh, please, Josh.
Quick,
I don't
Mr.
think
Girl,
I don't.
and then we're going to the other people on the panel.
Clearly, distinctions important.
Wait.
I've been making content for a long time. This is only a small portion of my content. Now listen. What I'm saying is, of being human, I don't think it is.
Destiny,
and so,
wait, can I just do one quick thing, and then you guys can do your shit?
Oh my god.
Just one quick thing.
Of course.
One quick
I
thing.
suck at moderating. I suck.
No, you're good. It's not. This isn't even a moderation thing. Okay, I promise. You're doing a great job. Okay. Wait, Bo Blacks, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. It is of my opinion that we have a collective fiction around this indignation related to like child that people feel like they have to take a strong position on it because they get a bunch of social credit for it. Can I make you a bet right now? I'll give you 10-to-1 odds, okay? On $1,000. I'll pay you $10,000 if I'm wrong on whether or not Max gets caught with either any underage girl or child in the next 2 years. I'll give you over 700 days to see if that bet comes to fruition. Would you agree to that bet?
Okay, hold on.
Wait, hold on. Wait. Okay, hold on. Wait, what?
I think the likelihood of that happening is low.
Why?
Because I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt and think that he only has a passing thought and attraction to children, rather than a full-on, attraction to the point where he will actually
if that never manifests,
distinction is important.
Sure, but if it never manifests,
these labels are important.
If it never manifests in like child abusing a minor, who the fuck cares?
See, this is where I want to say something really quick. Bo Blacks, you're frustrated because you want to use labels because you feel like they're useful, and they are. But MrGirl, what he's trying to do, he's trying to move the conversation forward past the labels, and that's fine because he's saying, at the end of the day, we're animals. We have these instincts, we have these drives, we have these desires. Where the conversation has to go from there, if you still think there's something wrong with what he's saying, is that there has to be a moral argument, which I believe there is, against certain behavior, certain actions, and certain fantasies. It can't just be a label of, well, this is... The problem is labels don't actually engage with the morality of it.
Yeah, the other thing is, if you're willing to concede that maybe I have the same sexuality or sexual makeup as 99% of people, what percentage of those people do you think would be comfortable with being called a no-map, or who would identify as a no-map, even with your convoluted definition of it? So if it's a label that
I'm taking a very
yeah, but what percentage of people do you think are going to call themselves a no-map, or accept the label, or want you to give them the label, or give it to them?
Maybe because the social stigmatization of that label has been for pedos to use it as a replacement. So maybe not, but maybe they could make a new label, and that label would be important because it helps just define an aspect of themselves, whether or not it's common or not. And having that label, I think it's important to have this conversation continue going smoothly, not to virtue signal or anything, just so...
It is to virtue signal. It's obviously... the only reason to label me is... the only...